for this game? Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to share my diagram really quickly, and let me know if you guys have any questions. So this is how I diagram. I know it looks a little bit different from like the average diagram out there, right? A lot of people diagram with spaces where they'll do like little dashes for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm going to try to, is that how you guys did it?
That's funny. That's how I diagrammed, just like yours.
Oh, that's just how you naturally diagram as well?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I like made up this way of diagramming myself as I was studying because it just saved so much time and space. It's so much easier to rely on your past combinations if you can keep track of them in an organized way. If you draw it like this, then you don't have to keep rewriting dashes, worry about like moving over rules, worry about any of that stuff. Often when you draw dashes all over the page, you don't know which combinations worked, which ones didn't, and it just gets really messy really quickly. So I highly recommend doing this. And the one thing you have to keep track of is if a combination doesn't work, just cross out that whole row. I think that's definitely worth doing. It might take an extra second or two, but that way you know everything you have in your columns you can rely on, right? If you take that extra second or two to cross out whatever doesn't work. So if you see here, I have a column or a space that says X, right? And that's like the letter that you won't be using, the out column. Did you guys use something like that as well?
I did.
No, that's new to me.
I did in and out. So I put in and then dash out. So my X said out.
Exactly. So it's very similar to that idea. These would be my in columns and this one would be out. The reason why this is helpful to keep track of, like what is out, is once you know that that's filled, you know that everything else has to be in. Does that make sense? It might seem less helpful here because there's only one thing that's out, but occasionally you'll have a game like this where like 3 things are out and 4 things are in, right? It's really important and helpful to keep track of what's out because once the out column is full, that's when you know everything else needs to be used. Does that make sense?
That's a good idea because sometimes I would just go through the variables and say, which ones didn't I have again, or which ones did I have?
Yeah, exactly. And this, I know it seems silly because it's one variable, but I promise for most in and out games, it's not one variable, right? You have more things on the out column, and so keeping track of them is super helpful. And when you do this, right, it's also easy to write this rule into the diagram. The fourth rule, right, that N and S are both visited but not on consecutive days. If N and S are both visited, can they be in the out column? No. And so that's like a helpful thing to be able to write into your diagram. And if you never had an out column, it's hard to write this rule into the diagram, right? One other thing that I would say is any rule that you can write into the diagram, definitely like make the effort to do that because it sounds silly, but sometimes you get stuck on a question just because you don't remember a rule, right? Or like how it relates to the diagram. And it's such a big time hang up. But it's so easy to fix sometimes with just writing rules into the diagram, closer to the diagram. The more you see them, the more likely you are to remember them and how they relate to one another. This rule, does this rule look similar for you guys? That N and S, it's the third rule again, but that they both can't go next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I like to draw double arrows under things that are interchangeable. So like this shows that it's not about N going before S, it's just that N and S can't be next to each other at all. Right? This means that S can't go before N can't go before S. It goes both ways. If you didn't have this arrow, did either of you write this without the arrow?
I wrote it 2 times. N and S with the box and dash, and then S and N box dash.
Okay, that's also
like sometimes I remember to do the arrows and sometimes I just write them both.
That's fair, as long as you understand it. It's very easy if you write it like this to misinterpret it, right? You might, like, what is the difference between this versus N can't go before S? Nothing if you're in the middle of the game and confused and trying to be efficient and you're stressed, right? Like, it's very easy to mess up. So that's why I think it's a really good idea to have the arrow there. This is what my rule looks like for the second rule. If O is visited, then it's visited immediately before H. So they would be like right next to each other if O is in. And then if L is visited, it's visited on Wednesday. That's how I would write that rule. For both of these, I would recommend writing the contrapositive. Did you guys write the contrapositive of those as well? Okay, no. I would recommend writing it. So sometimes out of habit, I didn't write it. So I stopped writing the contrapositive at some point as I was doing games, just because it became so easy for me to see it. But until you get to that point where you are 100% sure that you will not get confused, I would recommend writing it. Does that make sense?
And how would the contrapositive for that look for the second and third? Would it be if I have H, then I don't have O and H kind of thing?
Yeah, so if O and H don't, so for example, like if O and H don't go in that order, give me 1 second to, perfect, that's exactly it. Okay. So what that means is if O doesn't go right before H, O is not in. So when would you catch that? If H was in Monday, what would that mean?
Oh, you need it again? Sorry.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you.
If H, so that rule would come in helpful. Like if we put H in on Monday, can we put O on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday? No, we can't anymore, right? Because if H goes on Monday, there's no space for O to go before it.
So he's automatically out.
Exactly. And for the other one, the contrapositive would be if L is not on Wednesday, then L is out, right? So it would look like this. And the reason why contrapositives are so important is if L is in, L is on Wednesday. Okay, L being on Wednesday is like just one of the 5 spaces, right? We're more likely to spot it, or we're more likely to use this rule if L is not in Wednesday. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I know that for this rule, it doesn't matter as much because they're saying if L is not on Wednesday, it's just out. It's not like L is going to show up on Thursday, Friday, Monday, or Tuesday. But for some games and the rules, the contrapositive is more helpful than the rule they've given you. So that's why it's good to have both. It makes
and that's what I noticed too. Like they like to use contrapositives.
They do it. It's because the contrapositive of what they've given you sometimes is just the easier one to use. And so you just want to be conscious of writing both if it's not immediately obvious to you when you see the rule. Awesome. So do you guys want to walk me through the questions? Naisha or Ali, do you want to take the first question? Do one of you want to start us out?
It doesn't matter. Ali, if you want to go first.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I kind of did a Gravel rule version for this. So I just went through and I kind of picked the easiest rule first, and I just looked to see if H is ever on a Friday.
Perfect.
And then I crossed the wrong answers out really fast. Now if I can find it. So for this one, we don't have an H on a Friday, which is good because that kind of eliminates one option.
Yeah. Is E?
Sorry?
H is on Friday and E, right?
Oh, sorry. Yes. H is on Friday, so that's gone.
That's gone.
And then I just went through the other rules. So if I see O, there has to be an O and H.
Yep.
So I just went through and I just eliminated the ones that have that's breaking that rule.
Perfect. So OH, OH, OH. I think D, right? O and H.
Yes.
Aren't right next to each other, so that's gone.
And then the third one was a fun one because if L is there, it's got to be on a Wednesday. Yeah. So let's see. A is definitely L is not on a Wednesday, so that's out.
Yep.
And then N and S can't be together. So N and S are together on C. So the answer is B.
Awesome. Perfect. And that's a very efficient way of doing it. Naisha, did you have any questions about this one, or did you do it in a different way, or was this one okay?
Yeah, I was taught to, for these questions, you go based on the rules.
Yeah. Yep.
And it can help you,
Yeah, just do each rule. Something that's I found very helpful is when there is 4 rules, which happens very common. That's a very common number of rules. Almost always, pretty much almost always, 1 rule per question, right? Oh. So something that helps with is let's say you're taking the first rule and you crossed one out. You got read A, it wasn't A, B. You crossed out B. You can go on to the next rule. You don't have to look through C, D, and E. Does that make sense? And that's a very small tip, okay. But as you get really, really fast and you're trying to catch seconds to fit in that last question or something, and you're trying to get a perfect score, that is a helpful tip that works. You don't have
to
keep
say that one more time?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah. When you have 4 rules, usually each rule helps you eliminate one answer. Okay. So let's say you're looking at the first rule and you know that A is the one you eliminated. You don't even have to check B, C, D, and E. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it's gone. You don't even have to worry about it again.
Does that make sense for why? Because usually, and you guys will notice this more hopefully as you practice more, but the games with 4 rules, they use one rule to eliminate one answer choice. Right. They don't usually use one rule for 2 answer choices and then like skip a rule.
Right.
Does that make sense? And so yeah.
So what part do you mean by we don't have to look at the rest of the rules after we eliminate A?
Yeah, so if you use this rule already to eliminate an answer choice, you're probably not going to use it again to eliminate
to eliminate.
Choice.
Oh, okay, that's what you mean. Okay, get it.
Does that make sense? So then that way, like, I know it's a small time saver, but it can save you, like, a couple of seconds here and there, and it adds up, so.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed, too, practicing that the rule is not used mostly twice, and
Yeah. So, when it ends up being used twice is when you have 3 rules. Is what I'm saying making sense? It's always when there's 4 rules, which is a lot of games, like, a lot of games, it's very common to have 4 rules. It's not as common to have 3 or 5 rules. When you have 4 rules, usually they line up 1 per answer choice.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And then which one of the following neighborhoods cannot be visited on Thursday? Ooh, also, sorry, before we move on, I highly recommend whatever the answer to the first question is, writing it down in your chart. Just because then you already have a combination that works and you can usually use it to, maybe eliminate a future answer choice or you know something that works. So if you guys want to write that down really quickly. NOHSP, and what would be the letter that's out there?
L.
Exactly. So which one of the following neighborhoods cannot be visited on Thursday? What can we cross out?
This took me a long time at first, but then when I found it, I said, "Oh my God, am I kidding?"
What can you cross out before even starting working on this, based off of our combination for the first question? Based off the combination for the first question. So remember how we wrote that down?
Oh, S. S is in. So
exactly. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like, so it's like if you have stuff like that, I know this is just, we only have one combination right now, but like if this was the 4th question and you had 3 combinations, super easy to eliminate a couple of answers. Yep. And then so we know that S is out. What do you guys want to do next?
It's so hard because I already know the answer, but I'm trying to think of why it took me so long to get to the answer in the first place.
I'll be honest, I skipped that one first. I find the which question so hard, so I skip them and I always come back to them at the end. It makes it easier for me.
That's a great strategy. So have you guys heard like the words global versus local rules?
Yes.
So right, yeah. Global rules are like the rules that they give you at the beginning. Local rules are like when you have questions like this, right? If this is happening, that's a local rule, right? For any of the global questions, for like what can't be true, what must be true, what could be true, all that kind of stuff, sometimes it is easier to answer them at the end when you have other combinations, right? Like if something cannot be true and we had 6 combinations, it would be way easier to eliminate some of these, right?
So I think I'm going to start trying that so I could be within the 8-minute and see if that's what's part of the reason that's holding me back.
Yeah, for sure. And again, just to caution you for the 8-minute thing, I highly recommend just looking up the recommended time limit for the game. So I can do that right now so you guys can see how to do it. So this is PT79, right? So if you just Google PT79 Game 1 and go to the 7-stage link, see how that's like the first one? If you click on it and then go down, it'll have a target time. Do you see this? And this is significantly shorter than 8 minutes and 45 seconds, right? Do you see this?
Oh, okay, I see it.
Yeah, and this is, I know it's like almost scary to see. 5 minutes? I know, it's scary to see it, but think about like if you practice this game, right? You worked on it and you saw the same exact thing on test day and it took you too long, would you be upset at yourself? You would be, right? Because you're like, I practiced that. I should have gotten it, right? So when you practice, you have to focus on accuracy for sure, but don't let go of time. Because when you have a game that's only supposed to take you 5 minutes in a section, that means some later game is supposed to take you way longer, right? So when you're practicing games individually, you don't want to hold yourself to that 8 minutes time limit because it might lead you astray and lead you to think like, oh, I actually can do this game really well. Because maybe you can't under the time constraints that you are supposed to be using. Does that make sense? For getting better at time, I highly just recommend like repeating the game literally just every day in a row, once a day until you hit that time limit. And some people question whether that actually helps them because they're like, well, I already know the game, the setup, the rules, the inferences. It does still help, especially for the easy games in terms of cutting down your time, because easy games look like other easy games. They use very similar rules, similar setups, similar inferences, right? So even if you've memorized the inferences, I would still recommend doing them every day. The only time you can like put that game away for a while is if you memorize like C is the answer. That's not helpful, right? Like it's not even helpful to look at that game. But unless you really memorize everything about it, like it's okay if you memorized inferences and stuff. I would recommend repeating it until you can do it in time. Awesome. Going back. Okay, so what can't be visited on Thursday? Any ideas for strategies for how to do this one?
There's not too many inferences you can make on this question. I couldn't find.
Yeah, the easiest way I think to solve this question, right, is just to try out each one quickly. We can also come back to it at the end, but do you guys want to try each one out really quickly?
I think that's what I had to and tried each one out. And then when I figured out, I was like, dang, really?
I think so often we're tempted to just see the answer, right? I would say, do you guys know Akershana by any chance? The tutor? Akershana?
No.
Okay, she also teaches for Really Grit, and she gets perfect scores on the logic game section, and she only ever brute forces. Brute force means to try out every answer choice. That was her strategy for the whole section, but if you get fast enough at it, that's enough. Like, you don't need to make all these crazy inferences or just to be able to, like, see the answer, right? I think that's something you build up over time. So I think it's really good to have, like, brute forcing in your back pocket. Just get really fast at it because it's your friend. It always works, right?
It's so scary, to just get out there and try that, like, brute force and just try it.
It's true, but you get so fast at it. If you really invest time in it, you get so fast at it. And you can do it just as fast, brute forcing it, as someone that spent time and, like, saw the answer, right? Like, they're like, oh, does that make sense?
Yes.
One doesn't necessarily have to take so much longer than the other.
Right.
And so if we, like, just put them all in, right? What happens if we put H in on Thursday? What can we do with that? Do we know where O has to go?
Not necessarily.
Exactly. Not necessarily. Yeah. So what do we do next?
You could put L on Wednesday, and you could not put L on Wednesday.
Yeah.
There's just so many variables.
There is. So what you do when that happens, right, when things start branching off and you're not sure, you have to remember that if it doesn't work out, it might be because you did the wrong branch, like the other branch might have worked. Does that make sense?
Right.
As long as you keep that in mind, experiment however you would like. Does that make sense? Just don't lose sight of the fact that, maybe it would have worked if I didn't put L in Wednesday.
Right.
Does that make sense? Sometimes how I remind myself that is by doing this. I will split up the row and do like one with L on Wednesday and one with L out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And then
I'll have two combinations. So and then this could be like another. Does that make sense?
Mini row.
Yeah, you could have two combinations, and that way I don't forget that I branched off.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I should have drawn this line a little bit lower, but yeah. So you can draw a line in every row, so that you know that you've branched off into two options. Does that make sense?
Awesome. Yes.
So if we do that, let's pretend we're putting like one combination where L is in Wednesday, one combination where L is not in Wednesday. What can we do next?
So kind of like this. Would this be right?
Perfect. Exactly. And you can, exactly, in the other combination, like you can put O right before H, right? And if
Right.
O is not going right before H, O has to be out, right?
Right.
So then in the other combination, O would be out.
Right.
So does this look like it's going to work?
Mm-hmm. Because he can either go Monday or Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
N or S can either go Friday, but then we don't know about them going, because they can go Monday, Tuesday, not together, of course, and they can go Friday. But
so if
yeah, I just don't know how to put it.
No, I totally get what you're saying. Exactly. So when things start getting, the better and better you get at logic games, what I would recommend doing is something like this, because then you're fitting in so much in one row. But let me know if this is confusing. Like, I would write this out like this. I know this looks insane, but like N/S, right? They just can't go together.
Right.
But one of them is going to go over here somewhere. One of them is going to go here. Here you can flip P and N and S. I know this looks insane, but in this one row, I now have so many combinations, right?
Right.
I know that took a little bit of time, but you now like have a lot of options. And you know that for sure H can go on Thursday, right?
Right. That's true.
Okay, so H can go on Thursday. That's gone. What about B?
I don't think I have. So, we're doing B.
Yeah, what about B? Nottingham. So if N is going on Thursday, we know that S
cannot go on Wednesday or Friday.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I keep track of stuff like that just so I don't get confused about it later. So I like write it in really tiny, kind of like what people do for Sudoku. Just so that I like, once you've reasoned something out, there's no reason to feel confused about it if you just jot it down really quickly. So we know S is not going on Wednesday or Friday. Did you guys notice something about L yet? Like when you've been doing this so far? Is there anything weird about the letter L? Or like, we know that if it's in, it's on Wednesday. Otherwise, it's
out.
And so there's only two places where L can go, right?
Wednesday or out.
Or out. And so just knowing that, whenever you realize that throughout the game, I know it's kind of like simple and it is the rule. I'm just literally restating the rule. But whenever you realize that it's so limited, right, that's a great thing to think about first. Does that make sense? Just because like it's so limiting. It's either going on Wednesday or it's going out, right? And so even when you're branching off combinations or you're thinking about it, like that's a great thing to think about. Is it going on Wednesday or is it going out? It's a good thing to put in first.
Wouldn't it? Doesn't necessarily have to go on Wednesday or out or N, right? Because we could put S on Tuesday.
Say that again. You're saying L. Right? You're saying L doesn't have to go on Wednesday or out.
Oh no! Just for the question. So if you have S blocked off, you still have those two branches for L available. Like the S not going in Wednesday doesn't mean that L can't, right?
Yeah. L can still go on Wednesday. Okay. Sorry. Yes.
That's okay. I don't know.
No. I didn't quite understand what you were asking for a second. Yes, L can definitely still go on Wednesday. Yes.
Oh, because I was looking at it as for this, L cannot go on Wednesday because oh, never mind.
No, that's okay. Is there a specific reason?
Well, first I was gonna say because where would if O and H go on Monday, Tuesday, then where would S go? S won't be able to go on Friday, but I just realized that O and H don't necessarily have to be together.
They don't have to. There's certain other things you could do, and we still do have an out column, right?
Right.
We can put a letter out.
Right. Which O can be out and H could be in.
Yeah.
With S and P. So yeah, that's why I said never mind. I just caught it.
That's fair. And you don't have to. The thing with the branching off, you don't have to do the branching off thing and do it for every combination, but just know that it's an option to follow through with both if that's something that you find confusing, where you're like, oh, this didn't work, but maybe the other one would have. And if that's something that your mind gets confused over, getting used to doing both really quickly, because when you get really fast at it, it should only take you another 10 seconds to fill out the other one for an easy game. Does that make sense? Just getting efficient at it. And it's worth it if that's the thing that your brain is like hung up on. Does that make sense? Because then you just know for sure and you can like confidently pick an answer and move on.
Okay.
And it's worth it to have that like confidence. But here, even if we didn't branch off like that, right? And we just put L in Wednesday, what happens?
Then S would either have to be in Monday or Tuesday.
Could S be out? No, right?
No, S so has N and S have to be in.
Exactly. So you're right, Monday or Tuesday. Do you guys want to put it on Tuesday and then put H on Monday?
Mm-hmm.
And then O would be out, right?
Yeah, and then P would be on Friday.
Does that look okay? Does that follow all the rules?
Mm-hmm.
It does, right? Awesome. So then next we go to C, O. If we put O on Thursday, what happens?
H is on Friday. Oh, we can't do that one.
We can't do that one.
That's
immediate contradiction, right? So whenever you have the global cannot be true questions, right? Usually you don't, this is another like tip or trick as you get better and better. I would say like don't try to implement this too fast, but as you get better and better, you don't have to write out the full combination. Does that make sense? Just because when something can't happen and it's a global question, usually the contradiction, more often than not, it's fast. Like you try to write in one or two things, it doesn't work. Does that make sense? And if you keep that in mind, hopefully as you do more and more of these questions, you'll notice that. But the contradiction, when it's a global question, usually happens faster rather than like at the very end. It's not like you write in every single letter and then like the last letter doesn't fit. Usually it's like you try to follow up with a rule or two and then it's like you can't. Does that make sense?
Was it always at the beginning? Like usually is it A, B, or C?
It's not 100% of the time at the beginning, but it happens often enough where I think it's not even worth it. If you're like, again, trying to get a perfect score, you're like trying to cut down everything in terms of time. It's not worth it to do the full combination for A, B, C, D, and then realize he's the answer. Does that make sense? If you like write it out and think about it and you're like, oh, I don't see any contradictions. It seems like there's a lot of possibilities here. Like if you start doing branches and you're like, seems like I have so many options. Like there's 5 combinations here. Like you don't need to finish filling it out even, right? You can leave the rest of that row blank. So if you need it for a future question or something, you can come back to it. But what I used to do is like for a global question where they were like, this cannot be true or something, I would, or like must be false questions as well, because they're asking for the same thing. I would like start filling it out, and if it seemed like I could fill everything else in, I would just move on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Because like I said, the contradiction. Do you see how fast it happened for this one? You literally put it in, and you're like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. Next. Oh, also for these, another tip. It's very rarely going to be a floater. Have you guys heard that term before? Okay, so that's just
I heard floater.
Yeah, that's just a term used sometimes for a letter that has no rules associated with it, right? If a letter has no rules associated with it, and this is a global question, they're not adding an extra rule, right? So if a letter has no rules associated with it, does it make sense that it can't do something or that it must do something?
It has no restrictions. We don't know any of it
If
restrictions.
a letter has no restrictions, it doesn't make sense that it has to go somewhere or that it can't go somewhere, right? So a floater is less likely to be the correct answer for a question that's asking what must be true, what cannot be true, right? But it's more likely to be the answer for what could be true. Does that make sense for why? Because it can do anything. So if
Let
it's
me write that down. That's good, yeah.
And that doesn't mean that's always going to be the answer. Like you see it, you pick it, you move on or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you see it and you immediately cross it out. It just means try that one last, right? If that's A, don't start with that one because it's just not likely to be the answer. Why would it be blocked from going on Thursday if it just has no rules associated with it, right?
Mm-hmm. But if it could be true, should we start with that answer choice to see?
If it's a could be true and it involves a floater, it makes sense that it could do anything, right? Because there's no rules associated with it. And it's not that it's like 100% always the answer or never the answer for these types of questions. It's just more likely. Does that make sense? And does the rationale for why make sense?
Mm-hmm. That's a good tip. I'm going to try using that.
That is a good tip. That's really good tip.
And anything with the thing with all of these tips is you kind of have to like hammer them in on your own in terms of practice, because I could tell you all of these tips, but then as you're doing them, like you're stressed and you're just trying to finish things in time and like tips don't come to mind, right? You just do whatever your like natural habits are, right? But the more and more you do games, you will build these habits yourself if you get really good at games. Does that make sense? You will like naturally figure these out on your own. It's not even like someone else will be like, you will understand them and see them on your own. All this will do is hopefully speed up the process because you already know that this exists and happens.
Makes sense.
Okay, so this one has a local rule. If H is visited on Monday, which one of the following must be true? So do we have an example where H is on Monday?
Wait, our last one.
Our last one, yeah. So what I do for a question like this, because we have an example, right? So I just rely on it. So if H is visited on Monday, does it have to be true that L is on Wednesday? Maybe, right? We don't know if that must be true, but it happened. Does N have to be on Tuesday? No.
No.
No, because here we have S on Tuesday, right?
Right.
So I would cross that one out.
Yeah.
P is visited on Thursday. Does that have to be true?
No.
No. S is visited on Tuesday, maybe, right? S is visited on Friday?
No.
No.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
But you could put S on Monday. You probably could.
You could put S on
Monday.
Wait,
no, because never mind, because the question wants for that.
The question isn't asking for that, right? That's fair, though. That's fair. I would say put that aside just for this question. So if H is visited on Monday, right? So we're putting H on Monday. So now we just have to figure out which one of these must be true. We were supposed to cross out this one. Okay, so does it have to be true that L is on Wednesday or S is on Tuesday? How would you guys solve this one now that we've narrowed it down?
So I would write down my lines to come up with a scenario. Put H on Monday and then put O out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
And put L on Wednesday because I'm doing that example. So put L on Wednesday, and then next I would do N or S have to go in Tuesday. And then
Wednesday or Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so wait, just a quick thing. So you said N or S has to go on Tuesday. The other one has to go in Thursday or Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other space is going to be P, right? Whatever is left over?
P.
Yeah, it's going to be P, right? And so if you wrote out like all the possibilities, like again, I know this looks chaotic. Let me know if this is too confusing, but it would look like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like N or S is going here, and then we know it can go here or here, and then the other one's going to be P.
Right.
Would you do two branches? Like I just did like the two possible scenarios.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but I'm so new to this like out category. I'm kind of getting caught up with it because it's so. I've never done it so far. It's so strange to me.
So the out category looks less helpful on this one because it's only one letter out. But
Yeah.
anytime you have like 3 things out, you need to keep track of them because otherwise you have no idea when it's full, right? Like you need to keep track of. Sometimes the way you figure out what goes in is based on what goes out, and whenever
And
that
like
happens,
you'll know if you have an in and out game. Like for this, I automatically knew it was an in and out game when they said it's 6 neighbors, but they're only visiting 5. So that's how you know one of the neighbors have to be out. So that's how you can kind of be like, oh, this is an in and out game. So let me do a setup where one is out.
Exactly. Anytime where you're using some of your variables, but you're not using others, right? That's what makes it an in and out game. And if it makes it
I had no idea. I thought it was just a linear game that was off balance.
No,
oh, no.
Gotcha. No. Anytime. So this is a linear game mixed with in and out. So how those categories work, just to go over it really quickly, sequencing, things are going in order, right? So before, after, that kind of language. Grouping, things are going together or apart, right? That kind of language signifies grouping game. In and out is a type of grouping. Because when you have an in column and an out column, you're still saying things are going together or apart, right? It's just a type of grouping, but the groups are in and out. Does that make sense? So you have things that you're using, things that you're not using.
So this isn't it's not a linear game?
It is. It's a mix.
Oh,
So yeah. So it's called technically a hybrid game.
Yeah.
And what all that means, like people also call them mixed games, complex games. There's like a lot of different names, a lot of different terminology, but all that means is you're combining 2 different types of games. So for example, do you know what a linear game is and a grouping game is?
Yes.
Have you ever seen those combined?
Not necessarily. Good question. I thought in and out games was just like purely like you get a bunch of stuff in, bunch of stuff out, and there's 2 groups. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, they sometimes they do stuff like this as well, or like sometimes you have grouping and in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You can mix them, like the combinations can be mixed in any way. Like you can mix grouping and in and out. What that could look like is maybe you have people being elected president or vice president or something, and they have 3 presidents and 3 vice presidents, but there's 8 people. So then 2 people never get selected at all,
So that's in and out.
And then the other people get put in groups, right? And so that becomes a grouping in and out game.
And then I've seen a sequencing game with in and out where it's just like the ones that's in are ranked 1 through 4. And then, that I've seen that before.
For sure. So the only reason why it's helpful, because it's not helpful to like subcategorize games to the extreme, right? If you know that something is like, if you can like title it something extremely niche and specific, that's not helpful, right? The only reason why it's helpful to know that this is an in and out game is so that you can make the out column. That's really just it for identification. And the out column is helpful again because then you know. So do you see what, is it pronounced Naisha again? I don't want to pronounce it correctly. Naisha. When Naisha immediately knew to put L in Wednesday when she put O out, that's super important. When she knew H went on Monday, then her reasoning was, okay, now there's nowhere to put O in, so O has to go out. If she didn't have an out column where she put O out, would she immediately know that, oh, now L goes in Wednesday for sure? Maybe not, right? If she wasn't keeping track of it, it'd be hard to like immediately catch that, right? So that's what makes it helpful.
Yeah.
And
I think this out category is really going to help me pick up my time.
Yeah.
So I'm not searching through anymore.
Yeah, no, I hope so. And another thing that helps, like this is how I like to do it. When a letter can only go in 2 places, I like to draw it in like this. I hope it's not confusing, but if it helps you guys, you can use it. I just really like to draw it like this because then I don't have to like wonder about it as much. Like I know it's like right there. Like I know L is going in Wednesday or out. There's no other options.
Makes sense.
Awesome. So back to what we were talking about. If H is visited on Monday, which must be true, we drew out a combination, right? Does it seem like L has to go on Wednesday?
No. Hey, I mean, yeah, it has to because O is already out and only one thing could be.
Exactly. Did we even have to finish writing this combination?
Mm.
No, we didn't, right? That was actually something that Naisha deduced like almost immediately. She was like, H is going on Monday. O has to be out. That means L is on Wednesday, right? You could have stopped right there. So for a must be true question versus a could be true question, if you write out all the possibilities like this, so I got into the habit of whenever is possible to like write like, you know, a letter dash another letter in columns. I did it. All of the stuff that's not ambiguous is must be true stuff.
Okay.
Does that make sense? This L is must be true. This O is must be true. This H, they
Right.
gave it to us as a rule, and that's why it's must be true. Like this was the rule. This stuff is must be true. This stuff is
Right.
the could be true stuff.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense? So when they ask
Yeah.
a question like, what must be true, what could be true, I know all the possible answers. Does that make sense? Like if they ask me what could be true, I know like NRS could be on Tuesday, NRS could be on Thursday, NRS could be on Friday, P could be on Thursday, P could be on Friday. What must be true? H has to go on Monday. That's the rule. But L has to go on Wednesday. O has to go out. Does that make sense? So I think it's super powerful to be able to write out a line like that with the letter dash another letter, especially for could be true stuff, because then you don't have to like keep writing more and more combinations. You just have it all in one. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going so slow. Do you guys have to rush out anywhere?
No. Starbucks is still open for another 50 minutes here.
Okay, sounds good. If Hidden Hills is visited on Wednesday, which one of the following must be true? So if H goes on Wednesday, what must be true? Could we use one of our previous combinations to maybe eliminate stuff?
Our first one.
Yeah. So does it have to be true that N is on Wednesday? I mean, N is on Monday, sorry. Maybe, right?
Maybe.
O is on Tuesday.
Diagram.
Maybe. P is on Friday. Maybe. S is on Monday. We can get rid of that, right? Sorry. And then S is on Thursday. We can't get rid of that one. Okay. So if we write it in, if H goes on Wednesday, what do we know for sure?
L is out.
Yes, L is out. That's the out column kicking in, right? L is out. And then do we know where O has to go?
Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah, O has to go on Tuesday now, right? Because there's no more out column.
So B is the answer?
Exactly. That's it. Do you guys see how that works? Awesome. If N is visited on Thursday, which one of the following must be true?
We have one with N on Thursday.
Yeah, for sure. So
well, two actually.
We actually have two, right? So whenever I'm using a combination that I put dashes in like this, right? I'll circle the one that I'm committing to. So here I'm committing to putting N here and S here. And when I do that, I'm just way less likely to get confused.
Okay.
So
you wrote, like, if N is on Thursday, did you just write that S can't be on Wednesday and Friday? Is that what you wrote?
Oh, no. These were the previous combinations.
Okay.
And then of them, like, I know this one has N on Thursday, so I just circled that really quickly. So I know I'm focusing on that one. And then I also can use this combination, right? It was the previous combination that I had. And so I'm just going to circle N here and S here so that I know I'm committing to N here and S here. That way I don't accidentally think that, like, S could be here or something. Does that make sense? Because I'm using this combination. And then I know P is going here for sure, right?
Right.
So I can circle that, just so I know where the letters are. And then I can use both of those combinations. So for those, does it have to be true that H is visited on Wednesday?
Repeat what you just said?
Yeah, does it have to be true that H is visited on Wednesday? So looking at letter A, if N is visited on Thursday, does H have to be on Wednesday?
No, because none of our scenarios have that.
Exactly. Ali, does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Let me know. Do you have those combinations?
For the previous answer?
Yeah, one is H, S, L, N, P, O.
Right.
And then the other one is H, S, L, N, P, O. Oh, they're both the same.
Oh, they're both the same.
So we really only have
Perfect.
one
Thank
to
you.
look at. Oops. Yeah, we really just have one. L is visited on Wednesday. That could be it, right? O is visited on Monday. No, right? P is visited on Friday. Maybe. S is visited on Tuesday. Maybe, right? So if we start it from the beginning, N is visited on Thursday. What does that mean?
L is on Wednesday.
Does L have to go on Wednesday?
I thought we're now keying in the answer choices.
Oh, sure.
Are we keying?
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
that's what.
So, okay. Just to review that really quickly. Keying in the answer choices, like just trying them, does not always work for must be true questions. Because if it works for one, are you sure then that it must be true?
No.
Oh.
No, right? So you have to be super cautious. One thing you can do, one way, if you want to brute force it, try out every answer choice. One thing that you can do is put L somewhere else other than Wednesday. So to really check B, what would we do? How would we test B?
Don't put L on Wednesday.
out.
Exactly. And if we're not putting L on Wednesday, Naisha's exactly right. We have to put it out, right? So that's how we would test B. So we would put L out, and then what do we know happens?
S either have to go on Monday or Tuesday.
Yep, S has to go on Monday or Tuesday, and then we also need to put OH somewhere, right? So
it can either go Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday.
Well, so if we put S in Tuesday, can we put OH next to each other?
No.
No.
Oh.
So where does S have to go?
On Monday?
Exactly.
Monday.
Yep, S has to go on Monday, and then OH would go on Tuesday, Wednesday. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And if you're not sure about that, again, you could branch off, right? You could really quickly write a line and draw one with S going on Monday and draw one with S going on Tuesday, and you'd immediately see, right? You'd really quickly see, wait, if S goes on Tuesday, the next letters I'm trying to put in, O and H, I don't have anywhere to put them. Does that make sense?
Just a quick question.
That? Yeah.
So what you said about the brute forcing on must be true questions.
Yeah.
So for that, don't put what the answer choice is telling you to that spot, and that's how you brute force it.
Exactly. Does that make sense? I know that's a little bit confusing, but that's the way.
I'm just gonna write that down. It's such a good tactic.
Yeah.
So do the opposite.
Do the opposite. And the reason why that works is because if it must be true, it has to happen in every single combination, right? So if you can put L somewhere else, it doesn't have to be true. If L can go somewhere else, it's not must be true that it has to go on Wednesday, right? And so how you test for must be true is putting it somewhere else. Exactly. You just have to make sure, just really quickly, if it doesn't work, it might be because you put it in the wrong place. Like for L, we feel super confident crossing. We feel super confident about this because L can only go on Wednesday or out, right? If something could go on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if you're on a bunch of places, don't test out one and then immediately cross it out. Does that make sense?
There's other possibilities.
Yeah, you have to be kind of clear-minded about which one you're testing out and why. Does that make sense? It's a little bit trickier to test out brute force for must be true questions, but it definitely can be done, and like a lot of people do it, and it's a very solid strategy.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, so we were saying L is on Wednesday, so we put an O and H. The last letter we have left is P, right?
So we have D and E left.
Yeah, we have D and E left because this worked, right? So this doesn't have to be true that L goes on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then does P have to go on Friday based off of the combination we just did?
Yes.
Yeah, right? It seems like it, maybe. But then what about E? Does Sunny have to be visited on Tuesday? Sunnyside? No, right? Because our last combination, S is on Monday.
Didn't have it. Mm-hmm.
Do you see what we just did there? So we didn't have to do any more work at that point. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Do you guys see, I know this is kind of like nuanced, but do you see how doing out all the extra work helps sometimes and then it doesn't help sometimes? In terms of like sometimes you get the answer after you've done half the work, right? You don't have to fill out the full row. So in terms of getting fast and like saving time, right? The better you can get at checking back really quickly. If it's a must be true thing, what does that mean? It means if it has to happen, it's happening because of the rules, right? So if it's a must be true thing, what will happen when you're filling it out is a rule connects, right? And as you fill in things where like they can only go there, check back each time really quickly to see if the new thing that you just wrote in that must be true, maybe that's the answer. Does that make sense? The process for a must be true question will always be you write in, if there's a local rule, you write it in, right? And then you just keep connecting the rules. And any rule that connects is something that must be true. As soon as you start branching off, that's all could be true stuff.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense? So how would you know when to stop for a must be true question and check? Just to like...
When you know no other possibility could work.
Exactly. As
like,
soon as you're branching off. One. Exactly. Very, very often, especially in easy games. Sometimes in hard games, you will have the situation where things start branching off, but then you still will have a must be true thing at the end. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like you start, but then for easy games, almost always the branching happens towards the end. Like you connect a rule, and then it branches. It's like P or S can go here or here, right? Mm-hmm. So for easier games, if you know that they're an easier game, again, this is a tip that's you will figure out on your own and you will get better and better at it on your own. But you don't actually have to fill out the whole combination. Often for easy games, as you start branching out, you know that's probably when you need to stop. You can just probably find the answer already from what you already have. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. And then next game. We can go through this faster, sorry. I am clearly very slow in tutoring. Would you guys like to diagram?
This is great. This is my first time taking part in this, and this is great.
I'm glad it's helping. This is actually my first time teaching one of these classes because I usually do one-on-one tutoring. And for one-on-one tutoring, it makes sense to go really slow to make sure like everyone really gets everything. But I feel like I'm really holding you guys back from your free time. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Question. Yeah. Just kind of off topic, but with regards to the video, would that be available for us as well or no?
Yeah, I can send this video to you guys. I had a hard time getting like video access from Nicole, so I started recording it on a different platform, but I will figure out how to send that to you guys. Maybe I'll put it in Google Drive and send you the link.
Anything works. Sure.
Okay, sounds good.
Great.
I'll figure out how to
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually just going to upload it to YouTube and send you a private YouTube link.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. So we will diagram this and compare. Okay. Let me know when you guys are ready.
I'm also
ready.
Awesome. So I want to talk about this rule really quickly, if that's okay. Because how did you guys write down this rule?
I wrote.
Okay, so if O, then, and did you write the contrapositive of that?
Yes, right below it.
Okay, wait. So if O is second, then JK. If O, does that say if O is not second?
Yeah, if J and K is not together, then O is not second.
Okay, that's almost the rule. That's half of the rule, actually.
Okay.
And then can I see your contrapositive really quickly? I don't think I can see it. Maybe you can move the screen up a little bit, Ali.
Me? I'm just gonna write it. I didn't write it.
Okay, you didn't write it yet. So do you see the second part where it says, okay, so if O is in 2, then J and K are together, right? And then they say otherwise. So otherwise means if O is not in 2.
Right.
Right? So the full
So
rule, what is the full rule? Like the first part of the rule is, okay, if O is in 2, then J and K are together.
Right.
That's one part. The second part is otherwise. So that means if O is not in 2, then
J and K can't be together.
Do you have that written down? That if O is not in 2.
So O and not in 2 needs to be sufficient.
Does that make sense for why?
Yeah. So do I need to?
Sorry?
Do I need to put O as not in 2 as sufficient?
As well, yeah. So they gave you 2 if then statements here. It's a tricky rule.
Okay.
They gave you 2 if then statements here. Like one of them says if O is in 2, then J and K are going together. And then this is otherwise. Otherwise means if O is not in 2, right? So if O is not in 2, then J is going to a different area than K. So with this, if you write the contrapositives, you get 4 statements. Do you guys see what I'm saying? It's kind of crazy. It's a crazy rule. When you have that happened and you get 4 statements like that out of one rule, usually you can shorten it on your page by drawing a double arrow.
Right, and I'm trying to figure out how to shorten it. So that means...
Yeah, so you could just write a double arrow. So it would look like this. Here, I can show you. O is in 2, then J and K go together. Then the other one.
It's a more confusing rule than I thought.
Yeah. It's basically just a double arrow. So you can just read it both ways. Does that make sense?
You said what? I'm sorry.
It means you can read it both ways.
Right, and that's okay.
Like these are the 4 statements that you can get out of it.
Let me just write this.
So instead of writing all 4, you could just write 2 and then make the arrows go both ways. And that's called a biconditional. If you guys get used to reading biconditionals and they're helpful to you, I recommend writing out 2 instead of 4. Because if you had to look at this every time during the game, you'd be like, what's going on?
That's what I'm
right?
saying,
Because
I never had it otherwise.
Yeah. The other way to deal with this, right, because the biconditional thing, some people, it's like harder for them to see and understand what it means. It just means you draw double arrows, right? Like the arrow, here, let me finish this one. It looks something like this. That's what biconditional rules look like. But if you wanted to keep using this, right, you definitely can. But instead of getting confused by how messy it is, what I would recommend is anytime you look to this rule, only look at this side, right? Then you can figure out what's relevant to you. Like you only care about the rule that's relevant, right? So if O is in second, I'd only look at that rule. If O is not in the second group, then I would only look at that rule, right? If J is with K, like I could look at that rule. Does that make sense?
So that's the only. So the one that if J and K are together, O is in second. That's the only other one you looked at.
I would only look at the one that applies to whatever I'm thinking about. Does that make sense? Like if there was like a conditional rule that said O is in second, or like if there was a local rule or something, and like I ended up putting O in 2 for some reason, then I know this rule applies, right? Because O is in 2. So then I don't have to get confused by looking at all 4 if they don't always apply. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You can follow,
Right.
You can just like cover up this side and just pick the one that applies to what you're looking at.
Right. That makes sense.
Does that make sense for how, like, because some games you just end up with like a couple of conditional statements, and after you write the contrapositives, it's like, it looks really messy, right? Like, how can I look through all of this and understand what it means? Does it make sense to what I mean by when I say like cover up one half and really only think about them when one of them specifically applies? Is that helpful?
Mm-hmm.
So just follow the arrow. Like, if we got to check here if it's sufficient, then follow the arrow.
Exactly. Only look at it when the sufficient is fulfilled.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope that helped. Again, sorry I'm going so slow. So wait, just to review the rest of our stuff. So Mendez is assigned a 3. That's pretty simple, right? M goes in 3 all the time. Next rule.
Right.
O or P can't be in 1, right? So they're O and P not in 1. And then L is assigned to the same area as K or M, but not both. That's how I wrote that. LK or LM, but you can't have LMK, right? You can't have all 3. And that's an important thing to write down. Because or, again, this is getting maybe too nitty-gritty, but there's an exclusive or and an inclusive or in logic.
Right.
Right? And that's kind of a weird topic. But when people say, like, you can have ice cream and cake, does that mean you can have both or not? It's ambiguous, right? Right?
Reminds me of my symbolic logic class.
Yeah, exactly. So on the LSAT, when they don't say or both, what do they mean? Do they mean the inclusive or the exclusive or? When they don't say or both, what do they mean?
Is it the exclusive or? No?
I think it's the inclusive one. When they say like M or O must go in the 3rd column, right? Technically that means you could still have both. When they say but not both, that's when they're making it exclusive. Does that make sense? That's just helpful to know, because whenever they say like, oh, this or this, but don't say, but it can't be both or it must be both, right? The baseline for what you assume is that it could be both. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Because have you guys ever seen those rules where it's like, oh, M or O must go in 1? Technically, if that's it for the rule, that means that both could go in. They're not excluding the possibility of both going in.
Right.
But what if there's only one spot in that like graph for that M or O to go in?
Then only one of them can go in. If there's only one spot for the whole game, like if consistently there's one, then that rule, you're right. In that case, it would just have to be exclusive because there's only one space.
Okay, so it kind of applies to just grouping kind of things where there's multiple spots for one, like for variables.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like if it's a sequencing game and they say L or O goes in the one spot. Yes. If there's only one spot, then you can't put both in for sure. But definitely for grouping games or even in and out games, right, where they're like L or O must be in, technically both could be in.
Makes sense. Thank you so much for clarifying that, because while doing questions, I've always thought about that, and then I just never I forgot about it and I kept going.
No, that's fair.
And it always comes up. So thank you so much for addressing that.
Yeah, of course. No, that's fair. So that's all of the rules, right? We got all the rules. Okay. Is it okay if we should do that. We can't skip these. Okay. We can go through this quickly. M is assigned to 3. I'm just going to walk you guys through this one. Is that okay? Okay, so M is assigned to 3. M is in 3, M is in 3, M is in 3. Whoop, M's not in 3. We can get rid of that one. O or P is assigned to area 1, right? So O or P, neither O or P is in 1. So, okay, that's okay. That's okay. Here we have P, so we can cross this out, right? Again, this is one with 4 rules. So because I found one that this rule applies to, I can just move on. Does that make sense? So I don't even have to check E down here.
Right.
Right. L is assigned to the same area as either K or M, but not both, right? So it's either LK or LM. So LK, LM, wait. These are all 3 different, right? LK, M, 3 different rows. That doesn't work. Okay, and then last rule. Did I cross this out? There we go. If O is assigned to area 2, okay, so O is in 2, O is in 2. It applies to both of these. Then J has to be with K. O is in 2, J is with K. O is in 2, J is not with K. Gone, right? E is our answer. 7. And writing this down, sorry. So JKL, OP, and then M. And then 7. Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay. 7, if O is the sole ranger in 2, so O is the only one going in 2, right? What is the max that we have? We have 6 letters, right? There's a max of 1 to 3 per group. That means one group will have 2, one group will have 3, right?
Right.
And then we know they're asking which one of the following could be the complete assignment of rangers to Area 3. Is it possible for Area 3 to only have one person? No.
No.
No, right? Because then Area 1 would have 4 people, right? So we can cross that out without even thinking about it. That's definitely not it. We know that M has to go in the 3rd column. That's true for all of these, right? So what's the next step that we could take here?
P has to go in the 3rd column.
Yeah, P has to go in the 3rd column. Otherwise, you're putting it in 1, right? So these 2 are gone. Then we have these 2 left.
J and K have to be together.
Yeah.
Say that again?
For the J and K rule, they gotta be conjoined. So
Yes.
it's gotta be C.
J and K have to be together. Exactly. Awesome. And then, so this one is MP for Area 3, and then for Area 1, right, it would be everything else. So OMP, so it would be JKL for Area 1.
Why can't L go in 3 too? So I did it for L could go in 1 or L could go in 3.
So you're totally right. You could put L in 1 or 3. I just committed to whatever they had for the combination for 7, because in their version, like M and P were 3. You're definitely right.
Gotcha. Okay, so let me just, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
No. And that leaves you more open, though, to both possibilities, right? So if you wanted to, you could also draw it like this. Depends on how much you get into, you could literally, show that the L can move right over to the 3rd column. It depends on how helpful it is for you to have those multiple columns in one row. I found those very helpful in terms of, could be true questions and speeding up on time and stuff like that. But if it's not as helpful for you, don't worry about it. 8. If exactly one ranger is assigned to 1, right, which of the following must be true? You guys want to try redoing this one really quickly? Is that okay? Okay. So if exactly one ranger is in 1, we know that the other ones, one is going to have 2 and one is going to have 3, right?
Right.
Okay, and we know M has to take up one of the spaces in 3. And so if we put O in 2, what happens? If O is in 2, J and K have to go together, right?
Yes, because of that conditional rule.
Exactly.
O is forced and J and K to be together.
Yep. And then so putting J and K together in 2, right, meant that we had to put P in 1 eventually.
Right.
Right? So what if we put J and K in 3? What happens then?
Well, we still have to have M. So it'll be M, J, and K.
And then do we have anywhere to put L at that point?
No.
No. So when you have O in 2, you have nowhere to put, because you couldn't put J and K in 2. You couldn't put J and K in 3. You definitely can't put them in 1 because there's only one space there. So does it work to put O in 2 at all? No. And then so that's why D is the answer. So
I know I got it right on here. The one I did get wrong was 12, if we can do 12.
Of course. Let's do 12. If J is assigned to Area 2. So if J is assigned to Area 2, we already established, through earlier combinations, that we can't have K, J, and O all together.
Right.
Right? And if O goes in 2, J and K have to go together.
Okay, so J's in 2. O and K have to go together?
No. I was saying if J is in 2, remember how we've had past combinations where like J, K, and O are in 2 and it doesn't work out?
Right.
Right? So can you have O in 2 if J is in 2?
Yes, because K can.
If you put O in 2, then you end up with O, J, K in 2 again.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
So you know that if J is in 2, can O be in 2? I don't think so, right? Does that make sense for why? Because what happens when you put O, J, K together?
O would be in 3.
Okay, let's put O in 3 with M.
K would be in 1.
Okay, sure, let's put K in 1. Right, and then you can put L in 3 if you want, right? You can also put L in 1, right?
1, right.
And then P
would have to go in 2 then.
Right, because you can't put it in 1, but could you put it in 3 if L was in?
Yes.
1, like theoretically.
If L wasn't there, we can put it, yeah.
Exactly. So now we have some options. Does it have to be true that K is in 1? Potentially, right? L is in 1. That doesn't have to be true, right? O is in area 2. That doesn't have to be true because we just talked about how we could. Yeah, no, it's not even in our diagram. That definitely must be false. P is assigned to area 2. We talked about how you could put P in 3 if L is in 1, right? That does not be true. Does P have to be in 3? No, it could be in 2. Does that make sense?
I noticed now where I had messed up at. Because I think I had put E as the answer choice, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So P can't go, P is assigned to area 3 doesn't have to be true because it could go in 2, right?
Yeah, and I noticed that too.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Sorry,
you were really great, especially with now I know like some tips that I'm gonna try out.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm really used to teaching one-on-one and going so slow that I think I went a little bit too
slow. Oh no,
slow.
it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Do you have any other questions about the stuff that we did?
No, I did good because actually, like when we were supposed to do that on, I did good, so I didn't really come in with a lot of questions. Yeah. I just came in with time-saving questions, but you gave some tips for that, so I'm gonna go try that and see. Yeah.
I highly recommend doing them every day because again, like the example that I like to give is, let's say you did it 3 days in a row and it takes you too long to do it. You saw the same exact thing on test day and you like couldn't finish it in time. If that was the last game and you couldn't finish it in time, you'd be like, dang it, like I saw that, you know?
Right.
Like, and so if you were already investing time in something, it makes sense to keep doing it until you can do it perfectly, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Especially if it's an easy game. I'm gonna
start doing too.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You were great.
Yeah, of course. Bye. Have a good night.
Wish you the best.